like if somebody come up and say, David Allan Coe, listen, my favorite song is Jody Like Melody. I'll talk to that motherfucker all night long. What I don't like is the people that come up, they said you're somebody. Who are you? What do you sing? What do you do? Yeah, get the fuck away from me.
He was one of the most gifted songwriters country music ever produced, a man who wrote anthems for the working class and songs that defined an era. But when David Allan Coe died, Nashville turned its back. The Grand Ole Opry stayed silent. His former label offered no tribute. Even some of his own children were absent from his funeral. Instead, a yellow Harley-Davidson sat beside his casket, and members of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club stood guard. The man who had spent his life defying the establishment had one final act of rebellion, a funeral that the music industry refused to attend. The rise of David Allan Coe. The story of David Allan Coe's rise to fame is one of the most improbable in music history, a tale of survival, defiance, and a refusal to be defined by the system that had tried to destroy him. He emerged from the prison system with nothing but his voice and a burning determination to prove everyone wrong. David Allan Coe was born on September 6, 1939, in Akron, Ohio, into a family that was already fractured before he could form his first memories. His parents, Donald Mahan Coe and Dorothy Ruth Wilson, divorced during his early infancy, and his father remarried a woman who explicitly rejected young Coe, pushing him into emotional isolation at an age when most children are learning to trust the world around them. The rejection was a wound that would never fully heal, and it set the stage for a childhood marked by instability and rebellion. By the age of 9, Coe had been deemed incorrigible by local court authorities and was removed from the public school system, placed into his first state-run reform school. It was the beginning of a pattern that would define the next 2 decades of his life. The vast majority of Coe's youth and young adulthood, roughly 20 years, was spent shuttled through juvenile and adult institutions. His record included a 1956 discharge from the Army at age 17, followed by a 2-year sentence at the Chillicothe Reformatory for auto theft. In October 1963, he began a 4-year sentence at the maximum security Ohio State Penitentiary in Columbus for car theft, possession of burglar tools, and possession of obscene materials. It was inside those cold gray walls that Coe discovered his true calling. Music became his escape, his weapon, and his salvation. While incarcerated, he developed his core songwriting identity behind bars, cross-referencing musical styles with legendary rhythm, and blues singer Screamin' Jay Hawkins, who was serving time in the same facility and provided Coe with technical songwriting guidance. Hawkins, known for his wild stage antics and his hit, I Put a Spell on You, recognized something in the young inmate, a raw talent that needed to be nurtured. Coe later recalled that Hawkins would teach him about song structure, performance, and the importance of connecting with an audience. The lessons would prove invaluable. Hawkins saw potential in Coe that no one else had ever seen, and that encouragement gave Coe the confidence to believe he could make something of himself. Released from prison in 1967, Coe traveled directly to Nashville, Tennessee, determined to break into the music industry. He had no money, no connections, and no place to stay. Lacking lodging, he lived out of a striking, bright red hearse parked directly on the streets outside the Grand Ole Opry's Ryman Auditorium, busking for coins and tourist attention. He would perform on the street, playing his guitar and singing for anyone who would listen, hoping to catch the attention of someone who could give him a chance. The hearse became his home, his office, and his symbol of defiance. He was living on the margins, but he was living on his own terms. Eventually, his persistence paid off. He caught the attention of Shelby Singleton, owner of the independent record label Plantation Records, who signed him to a contract. In 1970, Coe released his debut studio album, Penitentiary Blues, a record that was completely rooted in gritty blues rather than country. The album focused on raw, explicit descriptions of prison architecture, convict labor, and systemic judicial corruption. It was a window into a world that most people had never seen, a world that Coe knew intimately. The album was a critical success, earning enthusiastic reviews despite thin sales, and it established Coe as a unique voice in the music industry. Coe transitioned to Columbia Records in 1973, aligning himself directly with the emerging outlaw country movement, alongside Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, and Tom Paul Glasser, to explicitly counter the polished Nashville sound. He became one of the most in-demand songwriters in Nashville, penning massive #1 hit records for other mainstream country music stars. In 1973, Tanya Tucker recorded "Would You Lay With Me" in a Field of Stone, and took it to #1 in 1977. He achieved massive radio chart success on his own terms with the satirical 1975 classic "You Never Even Called Me by My Name." The song, written by Steve Goodman, became a country standard and gave Coe his first top 10 hit. He followed it with the 1976 counterculture hit "Long-Haired Redneck" and the supernatural 1983 Billboard hit "The Ride," which told the story of meeting the ghost of Hank Williams. But just as Coe was reaching the peak of his success, a dark cloud was gathering over his legacy. The Nashville establishment that had embraced him as a songwriter was about to turn its back, and the blacklist that would haunt him for the rest of his career was just beginning. The Absolute Blacklisting by Nashville. Just as David Allan Coe was reaching the peak of his commercial success, a dark cloud was gathering over his legacy. The same industry that had embraced him as a songwriter was about to turn its back permanently. The blacklisting that followed would haunt him for the rest of his career and ensure that he would never receive the institutional recognition that his talent deserved. The man who had written some of the most iconic songs in country music history was about to be erased from the official record. The trouble began in 1978 and 1982 when Coe recorded and independently distributed two highly explicit mail-order-only projects, Nothing Sacred and Underground Album. The albums featured shocking, unrated tracks laden with extreme racial slurs, misogyny, and comedic profanity. The albums were not sold in stores. Instead, they were available only through the back pages of the motorcycling magazine Easy Riders and at Coe's live shows. The songs wound up being bootlegged for years before he began selling them on his website without his name attached. The impact on Coe's career was immediate and devastating. Major corporate radio syndicates, including Clear Channel Communications and Westwood One, instituted a permanent, absolute ban on Coe's entire music catalog. They refused to spin even his clean, mainstream hits like Mona Lisa Lost Her Smile. The ban was comprehensive and unforgiving. Coe's music was effectively erased from the airwaves, and a generation of country fans grew up without ever hearing his songs on the radio. The industry had drawn a line, and Coe was on the wrong side of it. The institutional rejection went beyond radio. Despite writing some of the most recognizable songs in country music history, including massive hits for Tanya Tucker and Johnny Paycheck, Coe was explicitly denied official membership to the Grand Ole Opry, the ultimate symbol of Nashville legitimacy. The same institution he had parked his hearse outside of, the same institution he had busked in front of, was now closing its doors to him permanently. It was a symbolic rejection, a declaration that no matter how many hits he wrote, he would never be welcomed into the country music establishment. Coe had supported the Opry from the outside, but the Opry would never support him. The corporate blacklisting extended to live performances. Major consumer brands, beverage manufacturers, and national corporate sponsors pulled out of venue contracts, forcing Coe off mainstream arena booking schedules and restricting his touring strictly to independent roadhouses and dive bars. He was relegated to the margins of the industry, playing to his loyal fans, but denied the commercial success that his talent should have brought him. The man who had once filled arenas was now playing to crowds in small clubs, his career truncated by the weight of his own controversial choices. The Country Music Association, CMA, and the Academy of Country Music, ACM, completely removed Coe from all ballot considerations, effectively banning him from appearing on televised broadcasts or receiving institutional recognition. He was not just being ignored, he was being actively excluded. His name was conspicuously absent from award shows. His music was not played at industry events, and his contributions to the genre were systematically erased from the official narrative. Coe frequently defended his transgressive content by noting his first drummer, Jimmy Brown, was black and claiming his use of severe language was an attempt at raw artistic freedom rather than personal hatred. He pointed out that he had lived with Hank Ballard and the Midnighters, that he had dreadlocks, and that he was friends with Charlie Pride. He argued that actors could say anything in movies without being accused personally, but when he wrote songs, he was judged for the content. He also noted that in prison, slurs didn't mean anything, and that the language was part of the environment in which he had learned to survive. However, the industry rejected the explanation, labeling him permanently toxic. The New York Times described the material as among the most racist, misogynist, homophobic, and obscene songs recorded by a popular songwriter. Coe's defenses were not enough to overcome the damage. The blacklisting was absolute, and it would follow him for the rest of his life. The rejection from the industry, the radio bans, the corporate sponsorship losses, and the denial of institutional recognition created a narrative of isolation that would follow Coe to his grave. The man who had emerged from prison to become a voice for the voiceless was now being silenced by the very industry he had helped to shape. The blacklisting was a heavy burden, but it was only one of the many challenges that would define his later years. The financial and legal troubles that followed would test his resilience even further. Deep-seated financial and professional bridges burned. The blacklisting that had exiled David Allan Coe from Nashville's mainstream was only the beginning of his troubles. The same defiance that had made him an outlaw icon also made him a target for financial ruin and legal persecution. The man who had written anthems for working-class Americans found himself unable to escape the consequences of a lifetime of bad decisions, and the bridges he had burned were now coming back to haunt him in the most devastating ways possible. One of the most controversial aspects of Coe's life was his formal alignment with the Outlaws Motorcycle Club, an international organization designated by federal law enforcement as an organized crime syndicate. Coe regularly wore their official patches on stage, bringing violent real-world associations straight into his commercial business dealings. The affiliation was a badge of honor for Coe, a symbol of his refusal to conform to societal norms. But it also made him a pariah in the mainstream music industry, a man whose very presence at a venue could scare off corporate sponsors and conservative audiences. The association with the Outlaws was not merely symbolic. It cemented his reputation as someone who operated outside the boundaries of respectable society. The financial consequences of his outlaw lifestyle were devastating. Following prolonged legal battles with record labels and promoters, Coe filed for Chapter 7 liquidation bankruptcy in 1990. The court stripped him of his personal property and luxury touring assets. To satisfy overwhelming debts to creditors and legal entities, a federal judge ordered the mandatory sale of Coe's entire pre-1984 music catalog. He completely lost the future royalties to his own greatest hits, including Take This Job and Shove It. Coe later revealed that his catalog had been sold in the bankruptcy proceeding for a mere $25,000. He claimed he had not been informed of the sale, a betrayal that left him bitter for the rest of his life. The iconic songs that had defined his career were now generating income for strangers, and there was nothing he could do about it. The financial pressure only intensified as the years wore on. Between 2008 and 2013, Coe engaged in a systematic tax evasion scheme. He explicitly demanded that concert promoters pay his performance fees entirely in physical cash, up to $19,000 per night, to prevent the Internal Revenue Service from tracking his income. He also refused to accept $50 bills, believing they were bad luck. The scheme was audacious, but it was also a federal crime. Coe was playing more than 100 concerts a year during this period, and the cash payments were a deliberate attempt to avoid his tax obligations, which dated back to at least 1993. In 2016, Coe pleaded guilty in federal court to the willful evasion of income taxes. A federal judge sentenced him to 3 years of probation and ordered him to pay over $980,000 in back taxes, interest, and fraud penalties to the United States government. He was now a convicted felon, a label that added to the weight of his already tarnished legacy. The Internal Revenue Service special agent in charge noted that Coe had chosen to impede and obstruct the due administration of the IRS in an effort to brush aside his duty to file and pay taxes. The conviction was a public humiliation, a reminder that even outlaws are not above the law. The physical and legal toll of Coe's lifestyle reached a new level of severity in March 2013. While driving his 2011 Chevrolet Suburban in Ocala, Florida, Coe ran a red light and collided with a semi-truck. The accident left him with extremely severe injuries. The crash also destroyed his remaining independent touring equipment and triggered civil injury lawsuits that further crippled his finances. Coe was hospitalized for 4 days, and the recovery was grueling. He later told a crowd at Billy Bob's, Texas, that everyone had quit on him except his wife, his road manager of 35 years, and his band had both abandoned him after the accident. The financial and legal troubles that plagued Coe in his later years were the culmination of a lifetime of defiance and poor choices. He had burned bridges with record labels, alienated the mainstream industry, and refused to play by the rules of the system. Now the system was taking its revenge. The man who had once written a song about defiance was now on the other side of the equation, begging for the mercy of the courts and the forgiveness of the IRS. The personal isolation that had begun in childhood was now complete. A fitting, if tragic, end for a man who had spent his entire life as an outsider. Personal life challenges, marital chaos, and biological family estrangement. The same defiance that made David Allan Coe an outlaw icon also poisoned his most personal relationships. While he cultivated an image of the lone wolf on stage, his private life was marked by a string of collapsed marriages, bitter family disputes, and a complete estrangement from his own children that would follow him to the grave. Coe's romantic history was as chaotic as his career. He was married 6 times, with his earliest unions marked by accusations of infidelity, financial abandonment, and domestic volatility. His ex-wife, Jody Lynn Benham, with whom he had 4 children, met Coe after moving to Nashville and taking a job cleaning rooms at the Opryland USA Hotel. When a fellow housekeeper invited her to meet Coe at a recording studio, he quickly invited her to join him on the road. When she asked if they could just date, Coe allegedly replied with characteristic bluntness, "You're either with me or you're not." In the 1980s, Coe reportedly embraced a polygamous lifestyle, claiming he was a Mormon and having multiple wives living under the same roof at one point. His 6th and final marriage came in 2010 when he wed his long-term companion, Kimberly Hastings. The couple had been together since 2000, and they married in Las Vegas with country star Toby Keith serving as a witness. When asked why he decided to get married again, Coe admitted he got tired of making decisions for himself. Kimberly assumed near total control over his business scheduling and domestic life, creating a protective barrier around the aging singer. But this final marriage would become a flashpoint for conflict with his children. Coe fathered at least 5 children across his multiple marriages, including son Tyler Mahan Coe and daughter Tanya Montana Coe. Over his final decades, he became completely estranged from them. Tanya later revealed that none of Coe's 8 children had been in regular contact with their father in his final years. "The last time I spoke with him was when I was texting with him when he was in the hospital after the car accident," she told Entertainment Weekly, referring to a 2013 incident that left her father injured. "But I don't know if I was actually talking to him or if it was someone else pretending to be him from his phone." The estrangement was not passive. Tanya described how her father had actively shut her out. She and her sister Carla allegedly had to track down his address and perform wellness checks on him in the year and a half before his death. In a particularly painful episode, Tanya recounted that her father disowned her, blamed it on her mother, threw $200 at her feet, and drove off without a second glance. Tyler Mahan Coe, who had dropped out of high school at 14 to join his father on tour as his band leader, told GQ in 2021 that he hadn't spoken to his father since 2013, when Coe dismissed him from his band and formed a new one. Tyler also blamed his stepmother, Kimberly, for building a wall between his father and his children. Following Coe's passing, his biological children launched a bitter dispute against his widow regarding the handling of his legacy, personal effects, and burial site. Tyler was particularly vocal, publicly defending his father's former band members and disputing Coe's claim that everyone except his wife had abandoned him after the car accident. Tanya, meanwhile, revealed that she had not been informed about any funeral arrangements and had to ask fans publicly for information. Despite the years of distance, Tanya remained adamant that her feelings toward her father were rooted in love. All of us children loved and will continue to love our dad more than this dimension can contain, she told Entertainment Weekly. I know he loved us and was proud of us. I know he was suffering emotionally inside always. She added, all we kids ever really wanted was for him to feel free in his soul and in his spirit and be happy. When Coe was laid to rest in Cincinnati, his funeral reflected the fractured nature of his life. His widow Kimberly and members of his band were in attendance, but many of his estranged children were not. Members of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club helped guide the motorcade and acted as pallbearers. The funeral was a quiet affair that left fans deeply moved, but it also exposed the permanent wounds that Coe had inflicted on his family. Wounds that would never fully heal. The tragic death and funeral attendance. The final chapter of David Allan Coe's life came on April 29, 2026, when the legendary outlaw country singer passed away at the age of 86. According to his booking agent, David Wade, Coe died in a hospital at approximately 5:08 p.m. His wife, Kimberly Hastings Coe, confirmed his death, describing him as one of the best singers and songwriters of our time. She shared that she had spent the last 3 years with him, trying to comfort him and make his final days peaceful. The cause of death was not immediately disclosed, but Coe had been in declining health for years, with his wife revealing in September 2021 that he had been hospitalized with respiratory problems. He made few public appearances after that, his health gradually deteriorating as the weight of a lifetime of hard living finally caught up with him. The news of his passing sent shockwaves through the country music community, but the response from Nashville was notable for its absence. The same industry that had blacklisted Coe during his lifetime offered no formal tributes, no memorial fund contributions, no acknowledgement of his passing. The Country Music Hall of Fame, the Grand Ole Opry, and major record labels remained silent. The rejection that had defined his career followed him to the grave. Coe had been denied membership to the Grand Ole Opry during his lifetime, and in death, the institution offered nothing more than silence. It was a final insult from an industry that had never fully accepted him, a reminder that his legacy would always be that of an outsider. A public visitation was held on Friday, May 22, 2026, at Spring Grove Funeral Home in Cincinnati, Ohio, followed by burial the next day at Gate of Heaven Cemetery. The funeral happened on Memorial Day weekend, a fitting time to honor a man who had served briefly in the military before being discharged for being underage. A small contingent of honor guard was present, and Coe's coffin was draped in an American flag. The location was significant. Cincinnati was where Coe had spent his final years, living quietly away from the Nashville spotlight that had once shone so brightly on him. At the funeral home, numerous photos and pieces of memorabilia were on display, offering a window into the life of a man who had lived on his own terms. The visual centerpiece inside the chapel was not expensive floral arrangements from music executives, but a custom Harley-Davidson banana yellow panhead motorcycle, a symbol of his alliance with the Outlaws Motorcycle Club. Members of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club helped guide the motorcade to the cemetery and acted as pallbearers. Coe's casket featured a black and purple color scheme with an image of him playing guitar during his mysterious rhinestone cowboy era, along with the words 1939 to 2026 and singer, songwriter, magician, actor, soldier, legend. It was a final statement from a man who had refused to fit into anyone's mold. The most striking absence at the funeral was the lack of mainstream country representation. Not a single A-list Nashville star attended. The funeral home was filled instead with independent blue-collar fans, local friends, and dozens of patched members of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club wearing full leather colors. The attendees reflected the people who had remained loyal to him through the decades, not the industry that had abandoned him. It was a gathering of the true believers who had followed him through the controversies and the blacklisting. The deepest wound, however, was the absence of his biological children. Tanya Montana Coe revealed that none of Coe's 8 children had been in regular contact with their father in his final years. The family estrangement that had defined Coe's final decades was complete, leaving his widow Kimberly and members of his band as the primary mourners from his inner circle. The funeral of David Allan Coe was a final act of defiance Alliance, a gathering of those who had refused to abandon him, or whom he had refused to abandon in the face of an industry that had turned its back. The man who had written "Take This Job and Shove It" had taken his final ride, his legacy secure in the hearts of those who had understood him best. He was buried in Section 16 of Heaven Cemetery in Cincinnati. His final resting place was a peaceful spot, a quiet end to a life that had been anything but quiet. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.